Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to the Odds Breakers, Playing the Odds NASCAR Style, an oval experience. I am your host, Paul Napier, and you can connect with me on Twitter at NASCAR Style Odds. This episode is sponsored by 5dimes.eu. For a reduced juice bonus, please visit theoddsbreakers.com/5dimes and click on the banner to get better lines than the average sports books. This week we have a great show for you with info you need to know before making picks, as well as this week's free pick. This is episode 5 of the Oval Experience. Each week we will go into track facts, history, trends, and what to look for before placing bets for this week's race. Well, it was bound to happen to me. Last week I let my emotions get the best of me and took one on the chin. I made a pick based more on my heart than what was in my head and right in front of me. I heard a guy say once about a podcast that it can't be about someone's emotions, and I went there. You know, and if you remember a few episodes ago, I mentioned that the Toyotas were bad fast, and there's a gap to the other manufacturers. And look, there, the top 4 drivers at Richmond were Toyotas. Well, unofficially. Eric Jones was disqualified later. Well, let's put last week behind us and move on to the Roval. This is the first wild card race of this playoffs. A road course in the playoffs? So much can happen. Does a non-playoff guy come from the bottom 17 and win? Does a driver looking from the outside punch their ticket to the next 3 races of the playoffs? Or does one of the regular playoff drivers do that? Also, there are 3 drivers who are already in the following week's round of 3. Truex, Harvick, and Kyle Busch. What's their expectations? All of these are factors for sure, and must go into our thoughts on picking head-to-head drivers versus the field, or to win, or driver to finish top 3 or 5. So what's a Roval? The Roval is simply a road course set inside an oval track that when combined gives the elements of both types of tracks. The Charlotte Motor Speedway changed the course of NASCAR history with the innovative Roval. This Roval is a 2.28-mile track with 17 turns. There are now several tracks that NASCAR visits on the Monster G Energy Cup Series that have their own version of a Roval, including Michigan, Homestead, Texas, and Las Vegas. Oh, and of course, so does Indy. And that has been a suggestion to NASCAR for the past couple of years to run that particular configuration. So what does it take to have a good run at a Roval? The winner will have to have 3 things. 1, a good setup of their car that can make both left and rights, as well as good braking in order to pass. 2, a car that can run really well on the oval portion, as well as having braking ability to make it back onto the road course portion. Finally, the driver must have a good pit strategy, as well as pit stops. This is probably the most important aspect of this race. Without it, a driver can have the best car on both the oval and the road course, but it's not really going to matter if the crew chief has poor strategy. This week, it could come down to crew chiefs wanting to go away from stage points in order to win this race. And watch, and mark my words, you watch this week. You'll have crew chiefs pulling off where there's 2 or 3 laps to go in a stage, hit pit road, and make the 4-tire change and get back out well before they can go down a lap. As you might know, the Roval is the newest track on the Monster G Energy Cup Series. This track has only seen 1 race, and this year's race is under a slightly different configuration. They have moved the back chicane in order to clean up a very dangerous spot on the track. You know, and moving the race away from the 500-miler at Charlotte Motor Speedway to this configuration was a brilliant move on NASCAR's part. I would say prior to moving to the Roval configuration, the fall race at CMS was just awful. The oval produced races under the lights, which meant cooler temps, more grip, and more horsepower. A driver would generally get out front and pull away and usually go on to win the race by sometimes 8 to 15 seconds. Boring. NASCAR had to do something about this. They couldn't scrap the fall race at the hub of NASCAR in Charlotte, and they surely couldn't touch the Coke 600 that they have been running since 1960. They experimented with the 2018 All-Star race and modified the cars with large drag ducts and more downforce, but that really didn't seem to make the oval any better, and they were forced to really look at the fall race and into doing that, especially if they were going to keep that race inside of the playoffs. And they decided to run the Roval. It's almost like NASCAR has started caring about what the fans think since Brian France ended up in jail. So, what do we do with only one race of history to look at? Well, there are several factors to look at for this week's race. First, in the last 7 road course races, 4 drivers have wins. Truex, Elliott, Blaney, and Harvick. Truex has 3, Elliott has 2, and both Blaney and Harvick each have 1 apiece. Also keep in mind, Blaney is the defending race winner. However, he was given a gift of the win when Jimmy Johnson wrecked Martin Truex in the front stretch of the final lap in last year's race. Truex leads all drivers with top 5s in his last 7, while Hamlin, Bowyer, and Kyle Busch all have 4 top 5s in that same time. Drivers to avoid, and again, I'm just speaking of playoff drivers, in his last 7 road course races, Eric Almirola has an average finish of 15.17. Larson has an average of 16 during that time. And somehow the guy seems to be pretty well favored this weekend, so something doesn't quite jive with me there. Newman is averaging an 18th place finish and as a little bit of surprise, Joey Logano is averaging a 21.14 during that same time. William Byron is averaging 21.4 in 5 career road course races. And you know the way that old William Byron has run lately, he's a driver I'm looking to pick against, period. So let's move on to this week's free pick. First off, at the recording of this podcast, there is nothing out yet about 5 dimes on a winner of this race. But I'd be hard-pressed not to pick that 19 to win his 3rd race in a row this weekend. So now let's get to that free pick. This week I'm looking at the Logano minus 155 versus Bowyer at plus 125 head-to-head matchup from 5dimes.eu. Bowyer finished 3rd here in last year's race, and he had a 3rd and a 5th place stage place in that race as well, while Sliced Bread had a 10th place finish and finished 4th in stage 2. Next, in the last 7 road course races, Joey has an average finish of 21.14, as we said earlier, with 1 top 10. Bowyer has an average finish of 7.86 with 4 top 5s. Like Bowyer, we need a good finish here, and I'm taking Clint to win this head-to-head matchup of 4 drivers in a small 10-unit wager. One last thing before I leave you to make your picks. These Toyotas are really fast. I have read several articles this week and listened to several drivers say the same thing. We have nothing for the Toyotas in these last 2 races. There is a gap, and until another manufacturer challenges, I just can't pick against them. Want more info and free picks for this week's race? Visit theoddsbreakers.com and click on the link for this week's race. If you like what you heard, shoot me a message on Twitter at NASCAR Style Odds. Hey, even if you don't like it, let me know what I can improve on. Constructive feedback is welcome. Thank you for subscribing, downloading, and listening to Playing the Odds NASCAR Style. Until next week, keep researching, keep winning, and have fun.